John Wagner is in Washington. He's a White House reporter for the Washington Post. So, John, there seems to be a renewed sense of optimism from the White House on health care. The president saying Thursday the plan gets better and better, and it's really good, and people are liking it a lot. That's a quote. So what's your sense of the progress that's been made and where negotiations actually stand?
Well, the White House is certainly doing some prodding of particular members in the House. The Conservative Freedom Caucus and the Moderate Tuesday group are the two groups that were really the holdouts when the bill collapsed previously. So the White House has been doing what they can to get those two groups together. They've been talking a lot. They've moved forward in their view. There's a lot less optimism, frankly, though, coming out of the House leadership right now. There's not actual legislation drafted, so we'll see. I mean, some of this, has a feeling of, having seen this movie before and it not ending well. But Trump, as everyone heard today, is expressing a good deal of optimism.
Yeah, so to that end, we're approaching the 100-day mark. It's been reported that the president is very concerned about seeming to the American people as if he hasn't been able to get some of the things that he promised to them done. Not only health care, but also avoiding a government shutdown. We know that they've had 7 years, the Republicans, to draft health care legislation. But does it seem to you and to others on the Hill that this may be pushing it just to get that win that he needs before the 100 days?
Well, there certainly is some sentiment on the Hill from Democrats that avoiding a government shutdown should be the first priority, and they only have a couple days to do that after getting back to town. But your point is well taken more broadly about Trump. Aside from the confirmation of Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, he really doesn't have any major victories on Capitol Hill to this point. And it's not possible that the health care bill would get all the way to his desk by the end of the first 100 days. But there is a remote scenario where it gets through the House at least.
All right, I want to ask you about Utah Rep. Jason Chaffetz, who announced his retirement earlier this week. He's obviously the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, the top investigatory body in the chamber. What does that mean for investigations going forward? Who is likely to fill that role? And I guess it must be much harder to do that job if you don't have the opposition to chase after.
Well, I think he, like most everyone else at a certain point, assumed that Hillary Clinton was going to be president and that his committee was ramped up to do investigations of a Clinton administration. So the scenario has been a little different with Donald Trump in the White House, and he's been criticized for not showing quite the same zeal to go after a Trump administration. And to the extent that Trump is being investigated in terms of the ties to Russia, that's mostly been handled by the House Intelligence Committee. So, there's been some speculation that Chaffetz is just a little bored. Also some speculation that he's interested in running for governor in Utah in 2020, and that this sets him up better to do that he'll have time to spend in the state and won't be having to travel back and forth as much.
So, John, from your reporting, is there a sense that early resignations like Chaffetz could be part of a broader trend threatening the GOP ahead of 2018? I mean, what are the central hurdles the party is facing in terms of its leadership focus?
Well, they do have to figure out, how to, how closely to tie themselves to President Trump, and I think that's something that we'll know a lot more about in the next several months when we see if Trump, along with the congressional leadership, is able to chalk up some victories like healthcare that we've been talking about. There's a very ambitious, very full agenda beyond that, which really they haven't gotten started on in earnest in terms of tax cuts, infrastructure, some immigration changes, sweeping immigration changes. So, I think the picture will become clearer in the next couple months.
All right, let's talk about the Democrats now. So House Democrats held a conference call Thursday to discuss their strategy for the government funding fight. What do we expect the focus of that call was about, and what are they specifically looking to extract from Republicans when they likely come to the Democrats for votes to avoid that shutdown?
Well, President Trump has made clear that he's interested in a couple things, in the same package that keeps the government afloat, including money for a border wall. There's been talk of stripping money from Planned Parenthood. The Democrats don't want any of that and don't want any of that to get caught up in a fight to keep the government afloat. So they think they have quite a bit of leverage here, that a government shutdown on Trump's watch would be blamed on the Republicans, who control, obviously, the White House and both branches of Congress.
All right, and let me ask you about this special election in Georgia and coming up also in Montana. We've seen an uptick in enthusiasm and fundraising for some Democratic candidates, but the Democrats have yet to pull off a win. We saw Representative Keith Ellison say former President Obama is partially to blame for the Democrats' poor showing at the polls in 2016. So where do they seem to be focusing their energy ahead of the midterms in 2018?
Well, these special elections are a little different in that there's only been one going on at a time, as opposed to having all seats up in Congress on election day. So there's been an opportunity to pour a lot of resources, to have outside groups all come in, particularly in Georgia, and I think we're going to see the same thing in Montana. And these are in districts that you have people who were members of Congress who are now in President Trump's administration, so they've been Republican seats. But there is an energy in the base to try to pick off these seats. And it's certainly possible that going forward, that Democrats will look for more opportunities that had been viewed as marginal pickup opportunities.
All right, John Wagner of the Washington Post. As always, John, we thank you.
Thank you.